I do pre-licensing study group. I do chapter 11 for Ignite. First time I've done a mastermind. So Erin mentioned to me when she asked me if I would be willing to do this, she just let me know that it's just kind of an informal discussion around a certain topic. So I guess today we're going to be talking about vacant land.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just making myself available to some questions, like for anybody that might be a little unfamiliar with vacant land transactions. I've done plenty of them, so I can kind of add my experience and what I've dealt with and what to watch out for. So.
Well, in 10 years, I have never listed one, and I have never bought one.
Is that right?
Wow.
Lucky
Yeah.
you. Lucky you.
If I had that opportunity, I'd be like, nah, I don't know. If it doesn't have a house, it doesn't exist.
It's not real estate. Yeah.
I wouldn't know where to begin.
Well, when I got into the real estate business, and that was in 1996, Pat Simpson was the manager at Royal LePage at the time. And basically she said, and I was the same way, I haven't the foggiest clue that now that I passed my exam, I don't know how to sell real estate. What am I doing? Right? My very first transaction. And she said, I'm going to give you a quick tidbit of advice on that. If you take the agreement of purchase and sale and follow it, it will guide you through probably 85% of the transaction. So looking at the vacant land schedule or the vacant land agreement of purchase and sale,
Yeah.
that's pretty much what you have to do to get through it.
Yeah.
Right?
So what do you do to list, though? I mean, is there certain things you got to check out for, or?
And not much different than a house. I mean, less information for all intensive purposes. You don't have to fill out such a lengthy listing addendum. You don't have to go, a finished basement or, asphalt shingles, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot less form work that you have to fill out. There's probably 2 less pages on the listing when it comes to listing a piece of vacant land. But you have to do your due diligence like you would when you list a house and just discover zoning. You have to ask the seller basically what information they have available on the land. A survey is always really helpful if you've got a survey of the property. If they've ever had, it depends if they've got, if it's a municipal service lot or if it's an on-site sewage disposal system and well. Some of those pieces of information, if anything has been discovered about those systems. Have you ever had an engineer come in and assess for a septic system? Yes or no?
Is that what's called a PERT test?
PERK. Or yeah, PERK test. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
percolation. Think of
sorry?
Percolation, PERK test.
Oh, PERK, not PERT.
No. That's the stuff you do your hair with, isn't it?
Right. I don't know.
I used that this morning, actually. That's my shampoo of choice.
What goes into the value if you were doing a CMA on a piece of land?
So I knew that question was going to come up because it's completely different. And again, it's no different. Characteristics of a house are different from each other. Same thing with the land. So you look at positive and negative attributes to value. Okay, so if you're looking at a piece of land and it's quite boulderous, how would you value that? More valuable or less valuable than a more level and soil covered lot, right? So if you have 2 lots, one side by each, and one has a lot of outcroppings of boulders, yeah, it's going to be harder to do the lot improvement in order to build a house on it, right? That's when you sometimes get architectural professionals walking in there and doing something pretty crafty on a piece of water, a piece of property. Where Alex and I live, there's a little street called Roundtwit Lane, and no, I thought maybe Janice, you sold it, but actually Sherilyn Deschamps sold it.
Cheryl Jenkins.
4 or 5 months ago. Sorry?
Cheryl Jenkins.
Sorry, Cheryl Jenkins. Right, exactly. Cheryl Jenkins sold it. And it was a very difficult piece of water frontage, lake frontage to develop. But somebody obviously hired an architectural engineer to go in there and design a house around that piece of land. And it was a very difficult piece of land. They did an amazing job. However, when they first listed it for sale, the first owner sold it for $550,000. I couldn't believe it because, wow, who would pay $550,000 for that? Then Cheryl listed it again after those people bought it, and she listed it for $599. And I said, no way is that going to sell. And it actually sold for $10,000 more than asking. So it was $600,000. Yeah, but it was a very challenging piece of land. So if you look at some lots, now we have Holly Shulman in our office, who has the most abundance of vacant land that's for sale, I would think, off Prospect Road now, but especially lakefront properties. So if you were to compare the lakefront lot that Cheryl Jenkins sold and what Holly is selling, I would put a significant difference in value just because of the nature and characteristics of the land. It forces you to spend more money on improvements to be able to put a home on those properties as opposed to what Holly has.
Okay.
With the land that Holly has, one of the very first house that was bought, because Holly's father-in-law developed a lot of where I live right now. It's called Walton Club Estates off Prospect Road. And she has sold a number of the lakefront properties. Now, she was selling them for $190,000 plus tax, which is roughly $210,000 all in with tax. But the first house that was built there, they built a large bungalow. But from what I was told, they had to bring in over something like 200 loads of fill to backfill the foundation.
Whoa.
Wow.
That's a lot of fill, and it's because the grade of the land and the existing soil types weren't there to use. So there was a very shallow base of soil before they started getting into rock soil.
Volkswagen-sized rocks.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just interject on the tax. When you said tax, I've
Yep.
only had one listing of vacant land, which has a conditional offer on it right now.
Yep.
Waterfront, going to be very difficult to build on. Is there always tax on vacant land?
No.
Okay,
So
good, because I didn't tick that box.
okay. So
So you mean HST exempt?
correct.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're like with the lots that Holly's created. So this is the thing, newly created lots, like brand new construction, if it's new, it's taxable. Okay. So when it's resale, it's been created and somebody purchased it for the first time. Now this is any lot that is existing pre-HST, because if you remember in the 1980s when our good fellow Brian Mulrooney implemented the goods and services tax across Canada, we all love that. That HST was not applicable to vacant land at that time. So any pre-existing lot before they brought in HST was HST exempt. So then if you had a large parcel of land and you created more lots, every infant parcel was subject to HST because it was new.
Oh.
And then you have purchase price plus HST. So that's the tax factor on that. Now there is one caveat to that. So I had a property for sale. It was 210 acres of land in Ship Harbor, which I sold last year. And we were talking about subdividing off because there was such a large parcel of land. We were talking about who really needs these size properties. There were 3 parcels all adding up to 200 acres, but not everybody needed that much acreage. They just wanted like a few acres to build on. So we looked into the idea of subdividing and selling off a few lots and make it more affordable for more people. But when we discovered that, I had a bit of a back and forth study with my seller, because he went online and he searched the implications of HST. His findings set out that if you create 2 or more new lots, then they were taxable, but anything under 2 new lots were exempt from HST. I'm not getting into the HST factor. I just want to throw it out there with you guys about that. And if you are getting into a situation where like mom or dad or somebody else spliced off one piece of 1 acre or 2 acres and created an infant parcel, I would then have the seller verify, because in the agreement of purchase and sales, it does say that the seller has to verify whether the property is HST applicable or HST exempt. When you're listing a property, I would have the seller contact their accountant, Revenue Canada, or their lawyer, who is an experienced real estate lawyer, to verify whether or not they have the onus of collecting HST.
Right.
So if it's a business for commercial purposes and you're going to be selling that land for profit as a business, then yes, you have to charge HST.
Mhm.
You have to collect HST no matter if it's new or if it's not new. Okay. So if it's resale lot, then no, it's exempt from HST. Alex, you have lots down off Powers Road.
Yeah.
They're owned by a religious group.
Yeah, they're owned by the Catholic Church, so they're
Okay.
all subject.
So they are all HST applicable.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. So again, you not every piece of land is HST applicable. So you just have to know the background behind it. Has it ever been sold before? Is it brand new? Is it been created after the implementation of HST?
I always assumed that church land was like not taxable.
So this wasn't an actual like holy piece of land. Like it didn't ever had a church on it or anything. So and I never knew this until getting involved, but the Catholic Church is actually the biggest landowner in North America.
Wow.
Pretty much the world.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what happened? Yeah. So how they got these ones is somebody that owned all this land at some point willed it to them because they had no one else to give it to. So it's never been transacted before, at least in modern time. So it's its first sale. And since it was given to them, we talked with their lawyer at McGinnis Cooper and he said, yeah, it's all like subject to HST.
Oh, okay. But if it was sold before that, it wouldn't be applicable?
From what I understand, like if I bought one and then just sat on it for 2 years and then resold it myself, it wouldn't be. Am I correct with that? Yeah.
Correct.
Same with buying a new construction house, it's plus tax. But when your people
Right.
sell it in 5 years, it's exempt.
Gotcha.
So when Alex bought the land, or let's hypothetically say he bought the land from the Catholic Church, he would have paid the taxes on it at that time.
Mhm.
You don't, just because you don't build on it doesn't mean that, you have to keep paying taxes and treat it like it's brand new. Just because it's virgin untouched soil and unbuilt on or no improvements made, the government collects its taxes on one time.
But if you put a house on it and sold it and it's new construction, then what?
Well, different story. If you did that and they could prove that that's the tax act. That gets into a whole different kettle of worms.
Oh, okay.
But if you did that under a company name, then yes, you would have to pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
You'd have to collect taxes on it because you're doing it for profit.
Exactly.
Oh, right.
If you build this house assuming that it's going to be your primary residence and then decide, you know what, I'm not going to move there, I don't like the area, whatever, you can sell it tax-free.
Oh.
Yeah,
Exactly
because you as a person have paid the taxes on it as you're building it.
Yeah. Exactly why a lot of small builders, like 1 guy, 2 guy general contractors, live in the house for a year and then sell it
Right.
to avoid the tax man.
Right. So, tax implication and income tax implications are a whole different topic. But, if somebody's proven to have that trend every couple of years, they sell their house and move on and build and sell and build and sell, the government can go to them. Because I know there's a few people around that I know that have done that. And we forewarn them, you're on the radar here. Revenue Canada is watching your pattern. If they see that you're doing this intentionally to gain profit and think that you can sell your primary residence tax-free, think again. That's a myth, because if they can prove that you're doing it for profit and making profit every time, then
You're going to get nailed one of those times.
then that is taxable. Not for HST, but for income tax.
Did they change the rules for if you sold your house within 2 years?
No, they didn't change any rules in terms of income tax and real estate. So if let's say you met a new fella and life was great, you wanted to build a home together, live together, and things didn't work out, you split. You can sell your property tax-free. Doesn't matter how long you've owned it. You could build it and not even live there and still sell it at a profit and not have to pay income tax on that profit.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Can I ask a rather specific question?
Yep.
I'm going to be listing a lot in Long Cove, which is sort of Martin's River on the South Shore.
Yep.
It is serviced by a community well. It has sort of like a bell and condo association for the water, the lights, the road maintenance, snow removal, etc.,
Yep.
of which there's a fee. So when you're looking at the vacant land schedule and seller's obligations, I would have to fill in the water service to the property line for that, because there is a conduit there where water can be hooked up.
Mhm.
Do you? That makes sense. Sorry. Go away. Does that make sense?
$1 million buyer, go away. For that lot you're talking about.
Yeah, it's my husband.
Oh, okay. Well, when you look at the agreement of purchase and sale, everything is a little different because every scenario is different. But you know, some things are applicable, some things are not. So I just sold I've got a lot of under agreement currently. I've got a builder looking at building on the lot. So the builder is separate from the owner of the land. So once we finalize the conditions, which I believe the conditional date is tomorrow, we firm up on the land. Because we didn't know if the buyer was just going to buy the land or going to buy the whole turnkey package. Now they want a turnkey package, but they didn't know which builder they were going to use. So the closing date is not until September, because we put the closing date farther out so that they could choose a builder and the builder could build on the lot, and then they were going to close the lot and the house at the same time. So they're still undecided which builder. We've got a price coming back hopefully today to decide on which builder we're going to pursue, and then we're going to write the agreement of purchase and sale to the builder to build on that lot. So one of the things that we looked at in the agreement of purchase and sale was the landowner's responsibility to provide certain amenities and services to the lot. So now this lot is on the very end towards the very end of Pockwalk Road. It's the only place that you can get an affordable piece of land in Hammond's Plains. So it was only $40,000 HST included. So that's a really cheap lot. And it's a very nice lot at that, but it's further out. So in the agreement of purchase and sale for vacant land, and I should probably bring it up and share it on my screen, but you'll notice in the seller's obligations, it talks about providing curbs, sidewalks, paved road, utilities, all those kind of things to the lot. Well, that's already there. So it doesn't apply, right? However, I sold another lot that's in Montebello, Brunello Estates, or helped a fellow buy a lot in Brunello Estates, a buyer. And it was a new road on a Milfy Way. It's a brand new street. So all of those conditions applied. The landowner was the developer, and we checked off all of those boxes, that the developer is responsible for providing sewer and water laterals to the property, cabling and utilities to the property, street paving, all of that stuff that the seller was responsible for doing. So that was applicable for the transaction in Brunello Estates, but none of that was applicable to the other lot that I sold down off the Pockwalk Road, right? Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, Helen, when it comes to bare land condos, assuming that the condo corp is the so-called developer, that they are responsible for bringing the lateral to the front of the property, and the property owner, the unit owner within the bare land condo, has the responsibility of connecting from their own home out to that service. Is that your understanding as well, Helen?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a weird situation, because it's actually Long Cove Summer Cottage Community Association, so to speak. And you can only buy land there if you become a member. That is a criteria.
Okay.
So it's, it's a mix of like grand houses and little shanty cottages, really.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's a lovely area, and there's shed, boat launch, all that kind of stuff. But all of the owners have these properties have mainly been in families for generations, you know how it is in Nova Scotia. And so yeah, I'm just like, there is like the pump house and the big well, and then it services about 5 of the cottages. A lot of the other people put in their own wells because with 25 units, it wasn't giving sufficient water. So I'm just like, I met the guy the other day, and I'm meeting him in the office on Monday, and I'm just trying to do all my homework. And so when I saw like land, morning masterminds, I need to attend.
Sure. So now you have to consider too that you're dealing with a condominium corporation, because if this is condominiumized, then the responsibility, it's really no different than you buying a condominium unit in a building.
Right.
Right. So the condominium in itself, the corporation has the responsibility of providing you with all the necessary infrastructure, right? You and your unit have to connect to the main laterals running through the entire condominium building. It's no different when you think of it in that terms to apply that to a vacant piece of land.
Okay.
The unit owner within a corporation, right? The unit owner just happens to be bare land. So you can build what you want on that land, and it's your responsibility as that unit owner or purchaser, even if it's a bare piece of ground within that condominium corporation, everything within your boundaries are yours to deal with.
Right.
Okay. So
Okay.
and I can't generalize that because different corporations are set up differently. The corporations will assume different responsibilities more than others. So to say that they're all the same and this is how it works for every bare land condo wouldn't be fair, because they're not. But generally speaking, your land is surveyed off and you have a meets and bounds description. So everything within your boundaries belongs to you as the unit owner, like when you buy in a building and they say from the drywall in is your responsibility. Same thing within the perimeter of the boundaries of the lot. Okay, everything from those boundaries, treat it like it's your drywall in, is your responsibility. So when you're buying even bare land, so you're dealing with two things at the same time, vacant land and condominium. Not a lot of that. This is kind of a newer concept within the last 8 years, bare land condos. So a lot of people don't have a great deal of experience in it, but you have to treat it like it's no different than you going in and buying a vacant piece of land. It has to meet your criteria for what your intended use is. So I looked at the agreement of purchase and sale for vacant land, and you still have to do your inspections on the land. You still have to make sure that the grade is suitable for the style of home that you're going to build. You still have the right to bring in a piece of machinery to do soils tests, all of those things. Now, I sold in a bare land condo out in Enfield Way on Cranberry Drive. Excuse me, and that's a bare land condo out there. So the laterals from the house to the well was their responsibility, but the well itself was the responsibility of the corporation.
I see.
The sewer line from the back of their house, the pump chamber, was their own and their responsibility. So the effluent pump chamber, if that malfunctions, that's their own responsibility. But once they cross the boundary line of their property, that then becomes common area. It's the condominium's problem because two neighbors are tied into the same septic disposal field. That's all of the responsibility of the condominium corporation, okay? If you had your own on-site sewage disposal system within the boundaries of your property, then that could be your onus to maintain and repair or replace if something should happen to it. Not likely that in a bare land condo, you would have your own septic system or have your own well system, but it's possible. If it resides in your land and it's your responsibility, then when you purchase that vacant piece of land, you would have to discover what type of septic system can you have on that piece of property, right? If it's yours. If it's everybody's problem, people usually don't care so much, right? If everybody's going to pitch in and maintain it, well, all right, I don't care how expensive it is because I'm cost sharing it with everybody, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly bring up and share my screen here with you guys. I'm just going to use my template on the web kits for my Wednesday nights study group. Okay, can you guys all see my my screen here now? Okay, so I'm just going to bring up the, I'm going to have to add, because we've never talked about vacant land schedules on my Wednesday nights, I don't believe. I might as well add the input form, which is for listing. So vacant land schedule, you use your standard agreement of purchase and sale, your first 3 pages for your standard agreement, as your purchase agreement for vacant land as well. So there's a couple of redundancies with that. I'll quickly go to the agreement of purchase and sale. It talks about under buyer conditions, it talks about inspection, right? That's 4.1. So right there you have property inspections. Okay, so you can put that in there, you can fill it out, but it's also a condition with the vacant land schedule as well. So I should have. So on the first page, you guys are all familiar with the standard agreement of purchase and sale. On the first page of the agreement of purchase and sale, you have to check off any schedules that are attached to the agreement. So if only you're doing the first standard 3 pages of the agreement of purchase and sale and adding the vacant land schedule, then there are 4 pages that you would put in the little pink box at the top left side of your agreement. So there's 4 pages, and there is vacant land schedule that you can tick off at the top of the standard agreement of purchase and sale. So this one here for vacant land, this is pretty much your guide when you're writing an offer on a piece of land. So this is what I was talking about earlier. I dealt with this in 2 capacities this year, just recently within the last month. One was, Brunello Estates, or is that what it's called, Brunello, out in Timberlake. So I helped a guy buy a piece of land directly from the developer. So it says the seller shall provide prior to closing and included in the purchase price the following services. Check all that apply. Street paving, check. Curbs, check. Sidewalk, check. Sewer services to the property line, because it's your responsibility as the buyer, as the landowner, to connect from the house to the sewer line. It's the developer's responsibility to make sure that you have a sewer line to connect into. Same thing with the water line, sidewalks and stormwater and drainage. You could also go further to that and talk about utilities, making sure that there's power and cabling and all those wonderful things, because that doesn't appear here. Okay, so you could also make sure that the seller's obligation is to bring in power so that you can connect into the grid and high-speed cable and those types of things for vacant land. You could also, seller's obligations to provide, and I think it's further down, a survey and so on. So again, using this as your guide, any municipal charges required to connect to municipal services are the responsibility of the buyer. So I just want to highlight this for you guys, because after this guy bought his lot and closed, he called me furious. Not my problem. It wasn't something that I was that I had to deal with, but he was asking me if I had any idea how much it costs to draw a building permit on this in the subdivision. It's not specifically this subdivision; it's every subdivision on municipal water now. Does anybody know how much it costs to connect to the water sewer and get a building permit on a municipal piece of land right now?
I'm guessing a lot.
Yeah. $4,000 for the building permit, plus, which is over and above the average building permit cost. It's less than $1,000 to get a building permit traditionally. Problem is, he decided he was going to go off and get his own custom builder. I was trying to convince him to use one of our builders that I work with and do a custom build for him. But he wanted this guy that he trusted implicitly. He's been around, he builds a great product. However, when you do that, you go outside of our normal structure, you put yourself at risk for the unknowns. For this one, it was unknown, because he got a plan drawn, budgeted it out, got the price from the builder, but then when the builder went to apply for the permit, he then discovered that the urban core charge for wastewater was implemented on all new builds. and applied to the building permit. So if you're going to tie into their municipal sewer line, they charge an upfront fee of $4,000 along with the building permit. This is something that all of the other builders knew about, except for this custom builder that is not used to building on city properties. You know, he only builds a couple of houses a year, and this guy, my buyer, decided that he would use this guy. However, I fear for the process going forward using a builder like that. If they don't know and they're not current with some of the things that affect the cost of building, what cost overruns this poor guy is going to face by the time this project is done.
Yeah.
So again, not my territory to have to know. Now that I know it, I can inform my guy, but if he used proper channels and and down below fire conditions, he had the ability to ensure that a building permit could be issued for his intended structure. And at the time that he verified that, they would have informed him. He didn't bother to do that. So unfortunately, it was a surprise when he called me, and he thought maybe this was the developer's obligation to pay it. But there it says, any municipal charges required to connect to municipal sewers are the responsibility of the buyer. So just to verify it, I called Scott Sim at Raymar Construction, and I asked Scott, because he's got 4 or 5 other lots on Amalfi Way. And I asked him, Scott, do you guys pay this, or did you negotiate that in with the developer? He said, oh no, we pay for that. And we draw the permit. This is something new that just came out when the Urban Core Plan came out, or Center Plan came out. They tacked on an extra $4,000 to tie into the city's water sewer services. So, seller confirms that the final municipal approval for the lot has been obtained, or it will be obtained on or before a certain date. So you can sell lots before they're actually received final approval. However, the agreement is subject to having final municipal approval, because you can't close on a property if the lot doesn't actually have a PID, and it won't get a PID until it's got final approval. Okay, so up at the top, when you look at, on the agreement of purchase and sale, it asks for a PID number. You won't get one in most cases on a new lot. On an existing lot, you will get one. On an existing lot, final municipal approval. So if this lot was created in 1970, then obviously it's already been approved. You don't have to, the seller confirms that it has already been approved. They don't have to provide more proof than the PID, and the lawyers can do a title search. So does anybody have any questions about the seller's obligations on that part of the lot? The purchase side?
Good to know.
Yeah. So buyer conditions, and this is the thing. So buyer conditions, so when you decide, this is one of the pieces of property that I want to buy, it's like viewing a home. You have to look at the quality of a lot. Right now, my lot on Pockwalk Road that I helped these folks to buy, we're under agreement, and when we met with Marchand Homes, my guys went from liking a split entry design home, and Alex, you might be familiar with lot LW21 on Powers Road. It's a split entry for $359,900. It's called the Iris Split Entry Plan, and it's perfect for this lot on Pockwalk Road. So we assessed the one on Powers Road, didn't like the lot because it was undulated, it was up and down, and there was a stream running through it, and it just wasn't going to fit. It wasn't going to have that house with a nice sprawling backyard, front yard. It's kind of built on the turtle shell. The mound was up and then it fell away on all sides. And they're like, yeah, we're going to be confined like we're on an island here, and we don't like the feel of this lot. So then they finally found this place out in Pockwalk. We walked the lot, and it was a beautiful park-like lot. So when you're talking about values, how do you value one lot from the other? This particular lot carried more value out in Pockwalk, just because it's a more level, buildable, big mature trees, less obstacles to work around in terms of running water. Like there was a stream that ran through the one in Powers Road. So when it comes to value, there's different things that positively and negatively influence value. And that's one of those things that influence value for my folks on the Powers Road lot. Too undulated, too difficult to work with, lots of rock, lots of excavation and things like that. So unfortunately, they didn't want to buy that one, and they devalued it and they moved on. But when we moved on to the Pot Walk property lot, the grade doesn't work well for a 2-story. It works perfectly. It's the absolute perfect lot for a split entry, but they don't like a split entry style. So one of the conditions in the agreement of purchase and sale that I put in as a custom clause was them to investigate that the style of home that they wanted to place the land, that the lot was conforming and conducive to that style. So they went with a 2-story style, but when we met with Jeff Marchand on the lot, he's like, guys, this is not a 2-story lot. It's very flat. So in order to have a 2-story here in a walkout basement, you're going to have to elevate the house out of the ground pretty much the whole way. So you're going to have 12 to 15 steps to your front door from the front lawn. If you've ever driven through Glenbourne or Beachville Estates, you see the 2 stories that are actually 3 stories out of ground. You've got the basement level and the garage at grade level, and then you got to walk up this huge flight of stairs to get into the front door to the main level. That's kind of what they're going to have out there. So before firming up this transaction, we had to figure out what was the grading plan. Once you bought this lot, built the house, how is the grading plan going to tie into the natural landscape so it doesn't look so odd and you don't have so many stairs to the front lawn? So then we talk about bringing in fill like they did with the lot just down the street that Holly Shulman had. So that's all things that you have to explore before you commit to buying a lot. Does this lot work for my intended use? So those are the things that you have to assess, and those are the conditions under the buyer conditions that you have to be able to discover along the buyer conditions process to know, are you going to get what you're expecting by the time you close on this property, right? So, but you have to know whether or not you can get a building permit for the intended structure, whether it be a house or something else. Plus, you know, most lots don't allow you to build, a city lot specifically. Municipal bylaws say you cannot build a home with structures, including garages and decks that are attached to the home, that will cover more than 35% of the land space. So you have to be careful of that, because building permit for the buyer's intended structure or structures. So this is the size of the home I really want to build on that particular lot. They may be denied the building permit because the size of the home, and this is more for municipal service lots because they're a lot smaller. If you go and buy an acre and you have a 3,500 a home that is larger in square footage than 35% of the land space, you're building an awfully large home. Mm-hmm. But in the city, it's not uncommon to have restrictions. By the time I finish my deck, put on my double car garage off to the side and build my, let's say, 2,800 square foot home, you might be oversized for the lot. So, you know, you have to be less than 35% with all of those structures. So maybe that was the most important condition in your agreement.
Can I ask you a question? That 35%, is there a grandfather clause that is associated with that?
Not to my knowledge, no. Now, I shouldn't say that. Everything has a grandfather clause. I will say that. So bylaws change constantly.
Yeah.
Okay. So in one area, I'll take my area because I know it well, off Prospect Road. I've been here my entire life. Prospect Road was the old former Halifax County. And then during the amalgamation, we got assumed by the city. So out here, we ran under different bylaws, which was a very general zone. Whatever you want to do with your property, so long as it doesn't damage the environment, go ahead and do it. You could have a convenience store or a welding shop or a flower shop, whatever. But then when we were assumed by the municipality, they went around and they rezoned everybody. So have you heard the term legal non-conforming? That's what that means. It's legal non-conforming, which means grandfathered in another term. It's legal to continue to operate because when the municipality came and changed everybody's zoning, well, they can't just come along and shut down somebody's business because all of a sudden they decide they're going to change the zoning. So he's legal, but no longer conforming with the existing zoning.
Okay.
Right? Until he stops, or she, the homeowner, the property owner, stops conducting that business or that use of the property for more than 6 months, then the zoning and bylaws revert to the existing zoning. So if it's only R1, then it's only R1U. So if you stop, running your mechanic shop there for more than 6 months, then the zoning goes back to R1 zoning definitions, right? Permit to install on-site sewage disposal system. So in vacant land, you got to know, and this is happening all the time. There are new on-site sewage disposal system types coming to Nova Scotia. Really, there was only like 2 or 3 different systems available in the province until now. They've come out with a whole lot more engineered and approved septic systems for various applications. Now, Helen, around Lunenburg is where I've discovered it most. They've got really small lots, some of them along the ocean, between the road and the ocean, or some of these old 80-year-old properties that are way undersized to put an on-site sewage disposal system, but they don't have municipal water connected, or municipal water and sewer connected to them.
Well, like for instance, out in Blue Rocks, because it is rocky, hence Blue Rocks.
Yep.
You see like peat moss systems, which are, quite effective. And also now with the new tank systems and everything, you don't need such a large septic field. I just had clients from Germany bought out a place out in Blue Rocks last year. There was a septic system there for the house, which is absolutely fine, but there's a barn that they want to convert into like a New York City loft living place, so, which they are doing. My husband's doing it, and the only system that could be approved there, because there was a pond and then the neighboring well, as well as their own well, was just a holding tank that will have to be, submerged and like not overly low but wide, and just be pumped out periodically, which they're fine with. But right now we're looking at the sewage system for this lot that I have a conditional offer on. I was with a guy the other day who did all the sewage and septic and water for Parks Canada across country for the parks, and that could only really have either a peat moss or the what I was talking about, the holding tank that you just get pumped.
Right.
So
that's the thing, and thankfully there are options, because at one time, right now, to create a new lot, so if somebody wanted to subdivide and create a new lot, the minimum size lot that can be created is 33,000 square feet. That's the smallest lot that can be created according to Development Services.
wow.
However, and Department of Environment as well, they work hand in hand. But before you create the lot, you have to have a septic perk test done. And the perk test will determine how large the septic field will have to be. So that lot may not be permitted to be created at 33,000 square feet based on the size of the on-site sewage disposal system. That they may say, I'm sorry, but you need this size septic system, and therefore you have to increase the overall footprint of the lot. So it can't be 33,000 square feet anymore. It has to be 50,000 square feet to host this on-site sewage disposal system. So that's one of the things. And on a pre-existing lot, if you're proposing a subdivision and creating a new lot, those are the things that you have to take into consideration. If you're going to buy a lot, you want to make sure for your budgeting purposes, if it's just a vacant piece of land, you have to know what it's going to take to build a house on. So the exercise that my clients and I went through on the Park Walk one specifically, because it's we're dealing with on-site sewage disposal system, so I'll use that one for example. One, they have to determine whether or not the lot itself was conducive to the style of the home that they were building. So it would have been the dream lot for a split entry, but it's not the dream lot for a 2-story, and they really want a 2-story. So then they had to decide, are we going to go forward and build the 2-story here, knowing the condition that we'll have to live in, massive stairs to the front door, or To tie into the existing grade, we have to import fill, and that could be like the lady down the street that brought in like almost 200 loads of fill to level off all around the house and tie into the existing landscape. So we look at probably budgeting an extra $6,000 to import fill for them to be able to build that 2-story on the lot. So if that was over and above the budget that they had for the final product, they were like, you know what, maybe this isn't the right lot to suit the house that we want to live in, right? So they need to discover that up front and have that information to decide whether they want to move forward or not move forward. So they have that as a right in the buyer condition. Same thing with the on-site sewage disposal system. Yes, it's a gorgeous lot, but if it requires a $28,000 or $29,000 septic system, and it's going to be an ungodly eyesore on the property, would they really want to go forward and buy this property? So that clause also protects them to know what is the cost and what is the type of system that's going to go in there. So we discovered, our daughter Jenna just bought a house on the lake, and the septic system was non-existent for the most part. So they had what's called, and Helen, you probably run into this more than anybody, it was the BioPro peat moss system that Shaw Resources puts out.
Yeah.
So it's a big tank that has peat moss in it, and that peat moss filters out all the effluent. But what we discovered about the BioPro system is there's a shortage of peat moss available right now. So they're trying to import coconut fiber in its place.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So.
It'll smell nicer.
Oh,
Yeah.
so good. I'm from England. I love peat moss.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of peat moss over in the UK and Ireland.
Yeah.
So, but the maintenance factor too. So if they say, yes, you can build on this lot. However, this is the septic system you require. I don't know. Not everybody's cut out to have a peat moss system. We talked to, so Strum Engineering came in, and that's what they assessed for this property for the previous owners. We scrapped that idea because I looked into it and I said, you know what, I'm not comfortable. Jenna, if you're going to buy this house, you have an annual maintenance cost and effort that you have to make on the septic system every year. And every 10 years, you have to exhume all of that peat moss or coconut fiber and repack it every 10 years. And that's going to come at a cost of like $2,500 to $3,000, depending on availability. I said, really, do you want to get into that kind of maintenance and cost for that particular system? So we hired Liquid Engineered Solutions, David Roy, to come in and develop a new system for us. And that's the beauty of having the options now. Before you had limited options. Now there are a whole lot more options that are recognized by Wastewater Nova Scotia and the Department of Environment that say these have proven the test of time. We can use those in the province of Nova Scotia now, and they've adopted them and endorsed them. So, so we have a completely different system in. It's designed to last 30 to 40 years, no maintenance other than pumping your tank on schedule every 3 to 5 years, right?
And what did you say the name of that system was, please?
The other one that we chose to go with?
That you were just talking about for your daughter's place?
Yeah, so it's not the BioPro. We went against the BioPro. So the new system that's going in is called an Elgin system, E-L-G-I-N. And it's a very low profile system. It's not one of these raised mounds. It's not a sand filter system. It's not an engineered contour system. It's a very low profile system. And so when I met with David Roy and I wanted to talk to him about different solutions, he is the distributor and he has the rights to sell the Elgin system in Nova Scotia. So he's very knowledgeable about it. He's an engineer, of course. But I asked him, okay, what's the life expectancy and have they had the test of time? Because I'm not going to use our daughter's property as a guinea pig for a failed septic system that's going to have to be exhumed and replaced in 5 years. Has this proven itself? Because I've never been privy to this Elgin type system. So he said, of course, it's been used all over Canada for over 40 years now and in various places in the United States. So therefore, and it has lasted over 40 years in a lot of cases, maintenance free, and it's a very effective system. So it's the second one since I've been dealing with David Roy, the third one that I've been dealing with in the last probably 2.5 months. That was the recommendation, not just by David Roy, by Able Engineering. Helen, they started in your neck of the woods, but
Yeah, I'm familiar with Able.
Yeah.
I mainly use Berrigan, but I'm familiar with Able too.
right. So Able has been recommending the Elgin system at this point. I had a 5-bedroom home out in St. Margaret's Bay that failed, and they developed a 5-bedroom home with the Elgin system, and it came in around $25,000. So again, going back to vacant land and dealing with septic systems, that is a very important thing to discover. When you have an offer on a property and it's on-site sewage disposal system, how do you know what type of septic system goes on that lot? Well, you need to do a soils test, and you have to bring in an engineer who will look at the soil. So there's 2 things the engineer comes in to assess on your vacant piece of land to determine what type of septic system needs to go there. They have to bring in a machine, because you either that or you have to hand dig a hole that's probably 3 feet to 4 feet in diameter by 5 to 6 feet deep. Everybody brings in a piece of equipment to do that. So they dig in the, they bring in either an excavator, a small excavator, or a larger excavator, depending on where they need to gain access to. And they dig, and the seller pre-authorizes you to bring in the equipment, right? Sometimes you have to mow down over trees to gain access to where the septic system will be. But that's a clause within our contract that pre-authorizes the buyer to go in there with the equipment, so long as they reasonably return the lot to the original state of repair. You can't just go in there, trash the guy's lot and leave, right? You have to be very mindful that you have to try and minimize your footprint on that lot, and that you try and restore it to the original, as best you can, to the original state of repair.
Where's
So-
that on the list of conditions?
If it's gone, because this is the other thing, Ann De Silva and I have had a lot of back and forth on our frustration about how they have changed a lot of our standard conditions. The seller shall, so 2.2, the seller shall provide the buyer access to the property to carry out appropriate tests, and the buyer agrees to return the property to its original condition and agrees
Okay, there it
to
is.
indemnify the seller of any loss or damage suffered as a result of property access.
How much time do you usually give to meet all these conditions? Because they seem like they'll take forever.
It wouldn't be unreasonable to ask probably 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
I should have done that with my POC walk deal, because just everybody is a little delayed right now.
Yeah.
We're now, tomorrow will be our 3rd week, and they're even saying, you know, extension. And I'm like, you know what? Sellers are not going to extend it. They've already expressed a bit of frustration that we haven't been firming it up by now, because my people just want to get another quote on the building costs just to compare. And I'm like, ooh, that's gonna cause delays for us. After my meeting here with you guys, I have to call my buyer, because tomorrow is the do or die day, and I have to know whether or not he is just going to take it anyway, this lot, and then decide on builder after the fact. So that's a conversation.
With the, as far as zoning goes, sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
Right now, with all the municipalities and government workers not working really, other than for like building inspections, like how do you find out like confirmed zoning, etc.?
So they are still working. Most government employees are working remotely right now. They're not in office environments, so you can't just drop in and acquire the information. So everything's done electronically.
Yeah.
So at least Halifax. I don't know what it's like in Lunenburg County, and I assume they're running the same way, because
Yeah, pretty much like leave a message and maybe we'll get back to you.
yeah, and 2 days later you may or may not get back. Gotcha.
It's really slow.
Yeah.
Like throwing a message in the post office and expecting an answer. It's like,
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
go out there and see if you get something.
Ordinarily, you know, it does take a bit of time. Everything takes more time now, obviously. Now, you know, Department of Environment, when the last septic system that David Roy and I had worked on together, it was, I think, a Wednesday when we finally gave him the endorsement. Yes, we're happy with the septic design. We costed it out with the septic installer. We're okay with the nature of the system and the cost of the system. We're going to go ahead and have the system installed. So that was a Wednesday. By Friday, David had already submitted the application for the permit, and the permit was issued that Friday afternoon. We thought it would take over a full week to get that permit.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of same day turnaround.
Pre-COVID or during COVID?
during COVID. This was actually at about 2 weeks after the provincial state of emergency.
Lockdown.
I was told by somebody from the planning office that, or whatever, anyway, that all the requests that are coming in are just put into a big bucket and then staff are just doing this. So whoever did, if you got an answer right away, they won the lottery.
This is a different department. Unfortunately, people are
Oh.
people are frustrated with development services because they feel that they're understaffed and it takes too long to get anything done. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but again, going back to the reason why you research the lot and why you research the on-site sewage disposal system, there's a lot of things that you have to factor in before you choose to buy a lot and build what you intend to build, because not every home like that one out in lot in Hammond's Plains is the right lot to build a certain style of home. He really, really, really wants a walkout basement, but because it's a low slope grade, you have to build the house so high out of ground, or alternatively, build a stairwell outside, a concrete stairwell outside to the basement. And that's the option that we've actually gone with. They don't want to elevate the house way above ground so that it looks like a tower. They want a nice home that has a nice, reasonable grade blended into the existing landscape. But to create access to the basement, they've decided to go with a stairwell to the basement. They don't like the idea because they can be problematic, create flooding into the house and so on. But at the end of the day, he was given the option and the choice to either, pass on the lot or firm up in the lot. It looks like they're gonna accept the lot with the nature of what they know.
A lot of buyers don't realize that not just any house can go on any piece of dirt.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
So assessing a lot, it has a lot to do with whether there's a lot of granite, whether there's a lot of rock, soils testing. So over here, I don't know if they've taken that out, but I put it in all my agreements because unfortunately, guys, you are suffering through all of these changes of the standard forms. Has anybody been in the real estate business more than 10 years?
Yeah, I'm a newbie.
Yeah. So the reason why I bring this up, because the forms have changed so much that they've dropped some things out. So you had the opportunity to bring in an excavator to do soils testing, and I don't see that anywhere here.
I think that's what the environmental assessment is.
No, the environmental assessment is, it could be interpreted differently, but the environmental assessment is to make sure that there's been no hazardous waste spills on the land.
Ah,
Yeah. So that's what I'm.
Well, the soils testing before if it's not for hazardous waste.
So why you go in to do soils testing, you're looking for the geology and the makeup of the lot. So if you say, oh, I can't wait to get my house built on this lot, and then they send in an excavator and 3 feet down, they hit nothing but a pan of bedrock or granite. What then? Chipping and blasting, not cheap. You got to send in a machine, you chip and blast the rock in order for you to set your footings and your foundation. That's extra cost. On the other side, you can go in. I had a friend that bought a lot without me. He did a private deal on the lot. I did the contract agreement with Raymar Construction. This was, I think, 2002. But he didn't do the things he needed to do with the investigation of the lot because he did it without me. So come to find out, when they sent the excavator in to start digging for the foundation, and this is the reason why you do soils tests ahead of time, to find out if the soils are the geology is there to support the live and dead loads of the house. So they kept digging, and it was soft soils. So if you were to build a 2-story home that they did on this property, it would have sunk into the ground because the soils were unstable and so soft that they had to keep digging and digging. So they were about 10 feet. So when you place your foundation, you've got an 8-foot foundation wall and your footings below it. So you're basically looking at a 9-foot basement wall in total, right from the top of the plate to the bottom of the footings. They kept digging, and they were at 10 feet, and the excavator stopped and said, I'm just going to keep digging, and I'm going to still find soft soil. So my buddy called me and said, what are we going to do? I can't build on this lot that I bought. It's not the case. He had to actually have an engineered pad. So a civil engineering company had to come in. They had to do further testing on the soils. Then they brought in specific infill, and they had to compact it with heavy rollers and compacting machines. So his lot cost him nearly $10,000 more than he expected because the soil and the geology wasn't strong enough to support the weight of live and dead loads at the house. So that's another thing that you get to do when you're investigating the purchase of a lot, is to make sure that the soils are there conducive, that it's not going
Is
to
there,
be blasted.
is there anything that you look out for when you're walking the lot? Like,
What it is, of course.
we're not experts in any of this except you. You've been doing this forever. But, you know, basically, you know, a person says, let's go look for a lot I can build my house on. We go walk the lot, and I'm like walking and looking at the trees. Like, you know, I just can't imagine. What do you look for? Is there anything that you can look for to pre-qualify a piece of?
Sure you can, because there's some things that's going to stand out that are quite obvious, right? You just
Like a big rock?
Right, the grade of the property, whether they're like Alex was saying, sometimes the excavators go in there to do the site work and they bring up like Volkswagen-sized rocks.
Right.
So those are usually things that are telltale signs. If you have large rock outcroppings all throughout it or big rock nuggets sitting on the land, then yeah, you're probably going to run into some granite, and there's a possibility that you're going to have to do chipping and blasting. And when you bring in a contractor, the contractor will always have a caveat in their agreement saying if there is any reason for chipping or blasting, it is going to be extra cost charged to the buyer.
Yeah.
Right? We'll always do that.
And
So-
then maybe if there's sogginess, a swampy
Yep.
area.
Exactly. So if you're walking the lot, if you've got a, ideally the most ideal lot, if you're looking for a slab property, you're looking for a fairly level lot, right? Slabs don't get built well on grade, like on sloping grade, right? Slabs work well on flat lots, and that's why you see, because there's no reason to have a basement and flat. So when you have an angle, so I'll go that way. If you have an angled property and it rains, the water's going to run downhill. But the more you decrease slope, the less that the water will run off. And if you're absolutely flat, then it's like putting water in a bowl or on a plate, right? It's not going to run off well. It won't, unless the soil is very porous and granular. It's not going to permeate quickly through. So the lot will be fairly wet on a more level grade for the most part, especially if it's on a lower area. If you've got hills up behind you and you're on a lower area, the water table is going to be higher. So a lot of things have to be investigated with that. Water table for your septic system, you'll have to bring the septic system out of ground. Foundation systems, you have to bring the foundation system higher out of ground. You don't want to get into the water table with either of those two things. Right? But when you're walking a lot and it's a low slope, you have to watch out for wetland, right? Moss, ferns, running water, standing water, all of those things will tell you, this is probably going to be the type of property where good for a slab, good for like a raised bungalow or a split entry where the foundations are up out of the ground. If you have to have like a 6-foot foundation for a 2-story, probably not the best lot to build on. And that's the lot that I'm dealing with in Pockwalk. So those are kind of some telltale signs, but you're not expected to be a specialist on all of those things.
That's what all these clauses are, like all of those conditions are for.
And you just took the words out of my mouth. Exactly right. That's what the buyer conditions are for. So when you guide your person through, you have to understand these are the types of things we need to investigate because they're going to impact your ability to build what you want to build or the cost of this project, if that's going to fall within your budget, or they're going to be huge cost overruns. Like my buddy had to put in a raised C2 septic system because he didn't do a perk test to find out what septic system was going to go in there. So that was an engineered raised 2 system that cost him, instead of the average field at that time in 2002 was around 12.5, it was closer to 20,000 for the raised 2. And then he ran into the $10,000 surplus on compacting and having an engineered pad. So you look at those things ahead of time before you commit to buying the lot to make sure that your project doesn't go $20,000 over just to have a functioning septic system and a support for your foundation, right? So those are the types of things that you have to look for when you're buying a lot.
Okay, good. I have to run, so.
Okay.
But thank you so much for your knowledge. Really greatly appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. So any last minute questions?
Know what the best part is, Tina?
It's
All this work that Chad just mentioned, you're going to do for like 2.5% of 39.9.
Yeah, that's probably why I've been lucky that I've not had land.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't even like having listings. I just like buyers.
It's so funny because what you just described was so much more complicated than I thought, and such a specialty that I'm shocked that it's still only 2.5% on 39.9. You know, like
I don't.
Sometimes, though, don't you see that people do a flat rate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
a lot
You
of
know,
flat
like
rate.
it's like
oh yeah.
well, it's only $20,000 maybe. It's like the whoever brings the buyer will get $1,500. Or,
Right.
but I mean, I've seen that quite a bit.
Yeah, that makes more sense. All right, take care, guys. We'll talk.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks.
So
Yeah.
win one, lose one. Hi, Michael.
Oh.
Mr. Arthur, are you there?
I don't think.
Yeah, no, I'm here.
You're there. Okay.
I'm just learning that my speaker works again. So
Oh, good.
I had it muted, and I have to hold the space bar down in order to talk.
Oh, is that right? Oh, that's an interesting way. Cool.
Well, it
So-
keeps all the background noise out for you, right? So
That's right. So we kind of covered the approach to investigating the vacant land and some of the things that you might encounter and the reasons why you do the investigation, obviously, to be able to do what you intend to do on the lot and to meet within the budget. Do you guys have any specific questions about, lots?
I don't think.
Yeah. Alex, you mentioned that you're comfortable listing a lot, right?
Yeah, listing a lot's fairly easy because that gigantic checklist of the buyers isn't on you.
That's true. Yeah.
It's pricing a lot. Coming up with, usually people that own, whether it's a house or vacant land, they have a number in their head. But then when you come across somebody that has no number in their head and there's nothing that you can see that is sold in the area, it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I teach, when I help people on Wednesday night pre-licensing group, there's a question on the real estate exam, and that is the advantages and disadvantages of the direct comparison approach. Do you guys know what the advantages and disadvantages of the direct comparison approach are?
I don't know, but I don't feel direct comparison works very well on the South Shore.
Right.
That there's not really cookie cutter neighborhoods of.
Yep. So that's one of the disadvantages. Having a hard time with comps, finding reasonable comparables or recently sold or traded comparables. One of the disadvantages of that approach. So that's an unfortunate struggle. So at that point, I mean, CMAs are going right back to it, that they're a whole beast in themselves, a whole day topic, if you ask me, if not a 2-day topic, which I think there should be more emphasis on in the real estate industry to be more, where the continuity is more aligned.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I go in and I place an opinion of value on a house, I want to know, how did another real estate agent come in with like $50,000 higher or lower than my assessment? How did that happen? We're all trained professionals. We're all taught to do kind of the same approach to the direct market comparable. So how are we that far apart? Right? So I think that's an important topic that our industry has to discover and dive into and rectify, in my opinion. I know there's a lot of things that are subjective, especially in our marketplace right now. Helen, what's the market in Lunenburg like? Is it as competitive as it is right now in Halifax?
Yeah, it's really competitive. Quite a few multiple offers. I mean, homes that hit MLS and hit MLS already conditionally sold, or hit MLS and have a conditionally sold within hours. And also, like for instance, I wrote an offer on a place a couple of weeks ago, and the buyers went $60,000 above asking, and they didn't get it.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah.
That's the hard thing about pricing right now in our marketplace, because you don't know. The only thing that you can do is say, there's a lot of momentum in our market. There's a lot of competitive buyers out there, competing buyers. Buyers are paying more than asking in so many cases. In this seller's market, it is impossible to underprice a home because the buyers will fight and correct the price regardless. Whether
Right.
it's spot on, whether it's too high or too low, the buyers will correct that in this kind of market climate. Same thing goes for trying to price vacant land. The direct comparison approach is very difficult in a place where there hasn't been a lot of vacant land sales. So where do you come up with the price? So basically you have to go into the market and look at other factors, right? Availability of other land, right? That's the supply and demand issue. If there's a lot of, you go to Kennecook and there's a lot of forestry land out there. It's very abundant. I can buy a lot from this guy, a 2-acre land from this guy, or this guy, or this guy, or this guy, and I have my choice. But in an established neighborhood where there's only very few, then the seller is at an advantage, because if you need to buy a lot and build on something, you're one of the very few options available. It's a matter of pricing it that you can't, at that point, and you have to cough this up every now and again. There are times when there just isn't information available. There just is not. You just have to look at the ratio between lot and home, right? You look at a $600,000 lot, or sorry, $600,000 home, what would you expect the land to be worth in relation to that overall package? So you have to look at some of the other things and try and do your best to come up with some sort of educated price. The only thing that you can do is look into the market to find out what would be a reasonable asking point. You are more inaccurate when you have to do that than if you go into a subdivision and it's got 20 lots that have just sold in the last 3 years.
Right.
Right?
And
So-
then also right now, because, when the lockdown hit, I felt everything fell off a cliff for about 3 weeks, and then everything just got so busy.
Yep.
From my experience, and I'm sure others too. And but there's also the people that have the mindset of, what is the trickle down of this? How is the market going to look in 6 months? Shall I wait and try and scoop a deal when it takes a while for the economy and for things to really go down after something like this?
Mhm.
So I don't know. It's just a tough one. There's so many factors.
There is, but dealing specifically, with any piece of real estate, whether it's a vacant piece of land or a house, if there are a lack of comparables, you have to figure out whether or not there's a vibrant market in your area. If there's a lot of buyers or if there's more sellers, that's all going to impact how you price a piece of land. Whether or not the land is a certain size, a certain characteristic. I mean, all of those things play into the value of a piece of real estate, right? If it's going to be a difficult property to put a septic system on or tie into municipal services, if it's going to be difficult to put in foundation systems or the right style of homes that are conducive to the neighborhood, all of those things weigh into how much the value of this lot will be. But if there's a lack of comparables, again, you look at basically on, let's say, a $350,000 lot, or sorry, $350,000 to $380,000, which seems to be the sweet spot for a lot of builders right now, looking for that average, second-time home. The lot costs are around $60,000 to $70,000, right? So you'd put that into how proportionate it is, or percentage-wise. You're talking about 20% of the overall build is the land value. So go into your market, and if you've got let's say a $600,000 home, or an area that has a lot of $600,000 homes, you're looking at about $120,000 for land value is what you would expect to pay for a piece of land in order to achieve a $600,000 build, right?
That's really helpful, actually.
So then you can look at that as your starting point for price. Okay, we're looking at $120,000 because if you are building a $600,000 package, and you can work it back, you can look at, okay, what's the average size of a home? They're 2,500 square feet. So just for rough figures, now the Raymark house that I just had priced, they came in at $161 a square foot. So that's a $402,500 home at 2,500 square feet, right? So if all the houses in the neighborhood are selling at 550,000, then you know $402,500 is the cost of the house, right? So take 550. So you're looking at $150,000, basically $148,000 lot. That's what the value of the land would be worth, because the house improvement, it's the cost approach, right? When you learn the valuation of properties, you've got cost approach, income approach, and direct comparison approach. What I just did was the cost approach, right? Because we know in an area like where you are, the direct comparison approach is you're at a disadvantage because there's not a lot of recent sales of land, that is. So if you're looking at vacant piece of land, then go into the market and say, okay, all of these houses, if they've been built, they're 15 years old, they're 2,500 square feet, they're $402,000 less 1% per year depreciation. So, you know, we're looking at about $60,000 depreciated. So the houses are worth $440,000. Where does that put my land value? So when you do the cost approach, you're looking at a land value of whatever, $140,000 by the time you do your cost approach evaluation. And then you can give your landowner a starting point. Okay, so based on today's market, historically, this lot is worth $140,000. Oh, I wouldn't sell it for that. Well, good news, because it is a seller's market and there are people looking for land, and you are one of the very few landowners to be able to build on. So yes, we could bump the price a little bit if you'd like. But at 140 now becomes your starting point, or 120. If they're more motivated and just want to get it sold, then you might want to list it at 119.9 or 109.9. Or if they're less motivated and you want more money and the market can bear it, then bump the price 10, 15, 20,000, depending on what the market will bear.
Good. Thank you.
No problem. So I think when it comes to the agreement of purchase and sale for you've got your standard 3 pages, and you also have your schedule of vacant land schedule. When you study through that, it will answer a lot of questions about about approaching vacant land. So I guess that's basically what I thought about starting, and what I'll finish with is that's kind of your template to get through. It's a lot of things that when you start involving yourself in transactions, like, you know, my history of knowing the improvement costs. Why do you do this? Why do you exercise your right to go in and do soils test and talk about the geology of the lot? Like, why is that important? I mean, some of the things that I've been experienced to encounter over my career that you probably don't have that experience. Like when you dig and you hit soft soil, what then? Do you abandon the lot and find something else, or can there something be done? Well, we know you can get an engineered pad to build on. It's going to cost you more, but it's an option. You know, so different things like that, that just, I think experience can help shed some light on things that you might have to look for and be aware of when you venture into selling vacant land.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too is when you list a property, there are some diligent owners. I just sold a lot down in on Powers Road on the ocean, and the owner didn't have a lot of information. He had a perk test done of the property in 2011, and then he decided not to build on it and got me to sell the lot this year. So we sold it. The only thing we could say is it was perk tested and he could get a septic system on it, but the septic system is no longer an option because it was done 9 years ago. After a couple of years, the application for the permit for the on-site sewage disposal system expires. So after 2 years, you have to then get a new assessment done of the septic field. So really, I went in, the only place that I could find any information was Property Online. People were asking me different questions, and based on my knowledge of lots, I could give them a general rundown as to what they're going to encounter, but we had very little information to offer. So it makes it more difficult to sell, to promote, and actually find a buyer when they ask you questions and say, we don't know, we don't have that information. We don't know. We don't have that information. So the burden of discovery falls higher on the shoulders of the buyers when they decide to buy and make an offer on the lot. They're scratching their head and saying, you're asking awful lot of money for a lot that you have a lot of unknowns about, don't you? So the buyer has to send in an excavator and an engineer to decide, what are the soils types. They have to go through a whole lot more exercise to buy a person's land. Where if the neighbor next door has a full file full of information and said, "Yep, we have our location, we have a survey, we have our restrictive covenants on file, we've had an engineering study done of the property, and this is what came back." The more information you have, the more marketable your lot's going to be. So if you're listing land instead of, because we talked about the buying side of it, when you're listing land, the more information you can discover and convey to a potential buyer, the more apt they are going to be interested in buying your lot over somebody else's that has a lot of guesswork to it. Right. So that's just kind of on the side of listing, a little tidbit of things to consider when you're listing a lot.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to go now. My dog's been very patient. That was extremely helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime. All right.
Good.
All right, Helen. Have a great day.
You too. You guys too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care. Okay. So I'm checking out here too, guys. So
That's it. We did a half hour over. We're good.
Okay, sounds good. Okay,
All
guys.
right.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you guys. Thanks.
Okay.